Hello and welcome to the Cyber Weekly. The Cyber Weekly is a podcast which talks about cybersecurity. Today we welcome Peter Muhumuza. Peter Muhumuza, thank you for coming on the show and thank you for accepting the invitation to come on the show.
You're most welcome, and it's an honor for me to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into cybersecurity.
So, my name is Peter Muhumuza. I currently am the IT Security and Risk Manager at KCB Bank, Uganda, which is part of a greater group of the KCB Group that is growing widely across Africa. And how I got into cybersecurity was quite an interesting journey as a compliance requirement within the telecom area where I was. There was need to actually put up so many measures to protect against pilferers of the internet, and that is within broadband company. So we had to come up with so many types of firewalls and also bandwidth limitation tools that required, AAA authorization accounting and authentication. So part of this required you to actually learn and also involve a whole team that understands how to create these provisions for clients and also ensure that the correct clients actually have the correct profiles. And this is, of course, how you earn income in the telecom space at that point. So this inspired me alongside several other learnings that I would get across the different IT certifications that I did. So this came out predominant as one of those things that had to be done. So I aspired to actually grow into cybersecurity. And when I got into the previous bank where I was, this came up that while you work with audits as well, you needed to understand aspects of security because it is one of the core topics that is predominantly audited to create that assurance to the bank. So I then had several interactions with consultants that were doing red team assessments, especially from the big four auditing firms. And this really inspired me. What they did was something that led me to desire to want to be in that direction. And eventually I took that leap of faith and started studying and finally got into it at that bank. And I've moved on to grow into the similar space.
That's interesting. Back in the day, was cybersecurity a go-to career path when you began?
Fortunately, CISSP has been one of those things that has been around together with CIS and CISM and almost a must of the learning for anyone that is aspiring to go into leadership of IT security at any point in time or IT audit in any point in time. So these are some of the things that we had to do even back then. Yes.
That's interesting. So, from your perspective as a risk manager, how do you balance innovation with risk management in the face of the increasing digital transformation across Uganda?
Okay. Thank you for that question. From the onset of software being developed, there should be governance within the software development lifecycle. In other words, every developer should have a tool that can actually scan the kind of development code that they're coming up with. One, for logic validation. Two, for if they're using an older tool and yet they have provided updates for the current version that he's using, then they should actually go to the current version and the tool will tell him you're using a deprecated version of a particular facility that you can download free or part of the subscription that you paid for. So GitLab, some of those that you can use either paid for or free at that point, but there are many other tools that can actually be incorporated like checkmarks within any framework that you're using to develop. And even within Visual Studio, the pipeline itself will be able to assess the software that you're using as you upload it, especially where you have multiple coding partners that are developing for a particular project. To go ahead and tell you that this particular module was developed by X has actually been scanned 100% and there are vulnerabilities that need to be closed, and it will not give you an 100% green for its security. until you have closed every one of those recommendations and adopted it fully. So those are some of the things that I feel were not there in the beginning. So as part of the project workflow, security comes in at the very beginning of requirement specification. Once the documents are developed, you need to advise, okay, at this step of the documentation, we will be required to either do a vulnerability assessment and penetration test. So depending if it's externally facing or internally facing, because any external facing, you need to do many things, including putting all such web servers to, for instance, a load balancer that checks to make sure that you're not actually being over subscribed to bring down your particular web portal. Then two, you have external attack surface protection. You have services that will come in like Cloudflare, where you have a web portal. And this will check that your DNS is not overwhelmed from the outside and you do not have people trying to take over your IP address and redirect traffic to malicious sites or where they could compromise your clients. And some of these will also bring you to understand when you have a service provider that is hosting your applications at a certain point. If you're in the cloud in that particular case, are they providing you the potential configuration that secures your, say, Kubernetes or your any other OpenShift containerized platform that you have out there? So these facilities actually have tools and dashboards that can lead you to see that potential configuration that or misconfiguration that you should take care of before you actually publish. And once you have assurance, especially where your maturity has grown, you will work with a minimum security baseline and say, this minimum security baseline says that for servers within my platform, they ought to be maybe Windows Server 20 something. Okay. Then they need to be configured with hardened server platforms. If it is Linux, this is what has to be done. If it is a web server, Apache of the sort, has to be configured to this minimum specification. If it is a Windows web server that you're using, it has to be configured to a particular IIS standard at that point. So these are some of those things that have to be done. And then after an application has been taken out of development, it can then progress to UAT, where people perform user acceptance tests with particular test scripts. And those test scripts need to give you feedback and say, okay, this is done internally, and this is what we're able to do. Then you can perform a simple test of what has been done internally using the tool like Tenable, Nessus in that kind of environment to determine if there are any operating system vulnerabilities internally that must be closed. And if they're exploitables, those must be closed fully before you can actually push it out to be tested outside. Because we have internal testing and we have external testing, which is external is called pilot. And that is you expose it to a few users who will tell you the experience. And you also test it from using tools like Qualys Community Edition. If you have not yet gotten a subscribed version, you can use ImmuniWeb Community Edition if you have also not gotten subscription. And, when you use tools like ImmuniWeb, you're able to do so much of testing and remediation until you close out for about 6 months of subscription, depending on whether you're corporate or limited to smaller versions of the utilization of these tools. And there are many other tools like can be utilized as at that point, but the maturity keeps growing, of course, as you develop these baselines. Thank you.
Oh, that's interesting. So when it comes to regulation, definitely we're looking at data at this point, the data itself. So when it comes to regulation, Data Protection and Privacy Act plays a big role in shaping governance, especially even in Uganda here. Are there ways of reinforcement challenges which we usually encounter when it comes to that?
Well, for me, it begins with one recognition of having a notice on any platform, be it a mobile app, be it a web app, sometimes even what you post on LinkedIn or any other social media platform could come with you announcing briefly that we do comply with the regulations that are within the country. such that you build confidence within the reach of the clientele, that we have recognition of the laws and the rules that govern what we do internally. We will handle data confidentially. I'll give you an example. When we are doing a user acceptance test, we do have information within the database. We call it dummy data. Now, that dummy data should not display clients' phone numbers fully. You can display the first two characters and the last two characters, but mask the rest, right? So that will keep somebody within reach. If they look at the test script and it returns actually similar to what those two characters are, then you're sure that that is the accurate information, and then you can go ahead. But also beyond that, when you issue an option for somebody to opt in and opt out of a test scenario for a particular tool that you're having, that gives them the liberty to actually have assurance that their data will be raised completely from your platform because they've asked to be out of that particular test. But once the test is done, you should give assurance by clearing that data and not migrate the data into production or some form of error like that. So again, we do understand that we do have data going across borders. So data sharing agreements with regions that have compliance regulations that are similar to our own in terms of laws or acts is very important as an assurance. And this you can get with advice from either hiring a DPO as a service, data protection officer as a service, or even having a data protection officer either on contract or hired for particular cases where you have the budget to do that. And once you offer the service for DPO, they'll serve you for the period of the contract. So if you're having a project that you're developing, that would be a very big initiative in helping you remain in compliance. Thank you.
Yeah. When it comes to a DPO, don't you find that most organizations always fear the fact that an external party is holding their data, and there's always that fear of the assurance that is this person actually following up with that line of maintaining the confidentiality of that information? What do you think about that?
Okay. In the recent past, we have had a lot of legal advisory that comes into data protection as a keen interest. You find law firms now offer data protection officers as a service, which is a very good advantage for us in the side of IT because expertise comes in very handy when we're dealing with legal advisory services or legal counsel. And we have seen that they will take precautions to protect that client expert privacy. They do a lot of that. And we have trust in them, particularly for people that would like to get it as a service. But especially where you're hiring, you're also seeing that the number of certified data protection officers in the country is growing, and that there's a lot of impact that ISACA, thanks to them, is having. And that predominantly has helped grow a lot of our industry in getting a lot of compliance in this area. Again, a lot of advisory is coming through. Also, a lot of clauses are included in third-party agreements that are entered into to encompass the factors of data protection. One of the other things that is also key is non-disclosure agreements signed with both staff and third parties. And this should be enforceable at that point, to say there's no breach that should be exposed. And again, when we look at the regulator, which is very key for us, they're also coming out. NITAU and the Data Protection Office therein are very strong. They are visible and they're participating. They're coming out with campaigns, which is very important. And I feel they've not left many of us behind. So once we also look at, for instance, in my area, where we're highly regulated, we also tend to comply by having staff that are within as data protection officers coming out with particular programs for the year that cover many areas, including and not limited to third-party risk analysis or assessments with reports that are provided and they reach the board at that point, showing where they've been able to measure compliance.
Thank you for that. Looking across Africa, Do you see opportunities for regional cooperation on cybersecurity governance and threat intelligence sharing? And what initiatives stand out for you?
For
You
data
on mute?
sharing in particular, for data sharing in particular, we see that there's a lot of threat intelligence that is coming through. Gifted for us, the Uganda Bankers Association, UBA, is one of those platforms where we share threat intelligence. For instance, I'll give one example that I saw that was brought out very clearly when we had challenges with SIM swapping. You know, one of the players in the market of financial services came out clearly through the Bankers Association and called on the rest of the members to meet and create headway. And I'll tell you this, the major players in the market for telecom have come out to provide us with APIs that give us compliance searches for new account holders. We're able to validate this in real time. Then we also have capabilities that also work into the National Identity Registration Authority database through the APIs that are providing to us, where we're able to validate, client details. And, we're sharing data, but it is very regulated. It's over secure platforms because the APIs are secure APIs that you're using, authenticated at that point. And, they're only bringing minimality, just the information you need to process a transaction. There's not much more that you can get. But as we also look at data sharing, we're going ahead to see that, again, MOUs are entered between parties that are going to share data across. And we're also seeing that we're having a lot of East African theme of realization that Kenya has got a similar agreement of data protection as we have. We have an exception of maybe South Sudan that is yet to come up with something that matches the rest of the countries within East Africa. But as we also look out, we have a lot of data that is coming in from across the globe, US, Europe, and of course, Middle East. We can't take those out. And we have a lot of Asia. And many of these are coming up with these laws if they don't already have laws that are similar to our own, which creates a lot of confidence. Then, of course, as you share data, you need to do due diligence. And this due diligence is very important for especially areas where the data that is being shared would lead to heavy fines. Yes. So that is one of the key areas where people are considering that I need to ensure that I grant the minimum information that is required to complete any transaction. That is what I believe.
That's interesting. In terms of the frameworks or standards, we are having NIST, the NIST framework, and then we have also the ISO 27001, which are commonly adopted in Uganda and Africa. How well are they adopted in our locality in general?
Okay, thank you for this question. Well, most standards and policies, procedures that we have, especially for cybersecurity, are based on both of those worlds, ISO 27001 and now, and also NIST 800. We also see that there's been a push from the National Identity Registration Authority, NIRA, when they issued a directive that for especially the supervised financial institutions, it was mandatory that if you were to query their database for any information on identity, you needed to be ISO 27001 certified. That pushed many people in the industry. And now we have major fintechs within the country under the Bank of Uganda. We also have many banks, of course, complying to this. So we've seen a surge of implementations for ISO 27001 in the last year, 2024, leading into 2025. And the deadline was 1 year. So that climaxed yesterday, that is 8th, when we should have all complied. But some of us, of course, in the industry are on the way to get there. And we see that this is a very important journey where staff within the bank, within the institutions, have to be trained both for some in lead implementation and others in lead auditing, such that you keep the bank or you keep the financial institution or you keep the fintech at that compliance level where there's no non-conformity that will be identified in the future. So you have to keep doing progressive improvements in each and every year that you get back for either recertification or surveillance audits. All that has to be done to keep you compliant within the standard, especially for ISO 27. So it's something that you do and you enter into it knowing that you will keep improving the environment. And of course, as compliance increases, you get to see that there's more structured data that is maintained across each of these institutions where this compliance certification has been issued, which is a very good plus for us as an industry. And we're yet to see this grow across the government as well, because NITA is actually pushing this for the side of government, and we would like to congratulate them for such an advance in technology compliance. Thank you.
Yes, that's interesting. Now, if we dive into the area of supply chain and third-party risk, this is obviously growing exponentially, especially with the rise of AI and all that, and also the idea of interoperating different stuff, APIs. How do Ugandan organizations manage cybersecurity among vendors and partners, especially SMEs?
Okay. Now, as part of supply chain management, we begin the journey with procurement and legal, who enter into contracts. It has been an advisory, especially from the central bank, that we include clauses that encompass cybersecurity, data privacy, and also the need for these organizations to maintain compliance in addition to what we do on our side. So it should be a balance of not having a vulnerability on the other side. And in part of dealing with this, we have some of those exceptions where, for instance, if you're dealing with a very big vendor, especially those that sell us technology, the very largest ones for databases, for operating systems, for cloud platforms, you need to have finances on the side in case you terminate your services or they terminate your services. You need to have enough money to capitalize acquiring a similar vendor. So some of those are not necessarily challenges, but some of those things that you need to consider while you're having these vendors. Because there are certain vendors that are very specialized, they offer services that are not offered by many within the region, or what they offer is predominantly a cloud platform. And while you utilize this cloud platform, they may be the only ones offering that cloud platform. So you need to begin looking out for alternatives that may offer you part of what the current service provider is able to offer, but you also need to have rebates where there is total non-compliance to initially the agreements that you have signed with them, where there's been absolutely gross neglect of, clauses within the contract where these support items have not been offered to you and you've requested severally. So there's a lot of intricacies in some of these contracts where you need to do due diligence on a yearly. And as a basic practice, you have developed a risk assessment template where you can adopt templates and customize them to yourself, where you perform these reviews and request that the same vendor conducts a review on your side so that they are sure that you're also complying. Now, what that does, reciprocal risk assessments help, especially where you have compliance already provided by ISO, you can provide a certificate of attestation of compliance. And this could save you going through the exercise. And this is exactly going back to the previous question that you mentioned. Having ISO, having NIST, especially where ISO offers you a certification for a year and it is still valid. If you offered me that, I'll be sure that for this year, they've been checked by an authority that I can depend on. So that is what I would like to add to this.
Okay. Now, in your experience, how aware are Ugandan executive leadership and boards about cybersecurity risks? And what strategies have you used to communicate risk in business terms? Currently, my words are refusing to come out of my mouth, but anyway, we proceed.
No
Yes.
worries. So what I've come to appreciate is that the cyber leadership mentoring can only be sponsored by the top leadership in every organization. So for any IT security and risk practitioner, this would be the very best way to launch and get the impact. Now, the leadership across most of the banks has come of age when it comes to awareness. They are very aware that spear phishing is out for them to target having their prize jewels through the leadership is a common thing that people try, and they are very aware. They will spear, they'll actually spell that this is not our website, this is not our email format, this is not the font that we use, this is not the sort of email format that we actually have for the email addresses. So they can be able to spot most of these things. However, I've also noted that where people are in doubt at the leadership level, there's been a lot of reach out to IT security practitioners across the few areas where I've had interactions. They'll consult. And when there's an engagement, they'll always want to have the cyber experts or the IT risk expert be present to help address where they may be having a shortfall of knowledge. I'll give you an example. Where we have crypto and discussions by the central bank, for instance, to begin to prepare for such, where we have requirements for, AI as one of those regulations that will be coming pretty soon. There's a lot of reading, there's a lot of engagement. When you hear discussions coming in from the leadership, these are some of the things that they're engaging in to read and get abreast. So I see a lot of improvement, though there may be areas where, there's less governance on these for now, and we expect that this should be coming in the in the soon coming days, especially for regulated entities. And for non-regulated entities like the government, you hear they're also talking about, technology frameworks that should be able to cater for any of these initiatives as they keep growing to utilization of the public.
Okay. What are the top cybersecurity risks currently facing organizations in Uganda, and how do they differ from those in the more developed markets?
I've had this severally that you never know that you're actually compromised until you find out. Sometimes you may have been compromised way earlier than you're able to detect. And now that you've been able to find out, it shouldn't be that it has just happened that day you found out. So, in other words, we have seen scenarios where we're engaging as a country in acquiring predominant security tools like anti-malware, like antivirus, as some still do. And also on the other side, we're acquiring technologies that are being deployed on our endpoints. I'll give you an example. Like encryption, hard disk encryption is one of those things that people are beginning to utilize, biometrics, and some other more complex passwords as compared to what we had before. Now, passwords, of course, has been an issue that many people use very simple passwords, but the awareness is increasing. Because as you hear the telcos talking about passwords and all this SIM swapping and these challenges, people are beginning to change from, 0123 or 012. They're changing from their birth years. They're adding a slightly more complication to how a password or passphrase should be, and that is likely to improve. However, as we improve, we also know that the techniques and technologies that the threat practitioners are using keep changing. Right now, you could receive a phone call with the voice of somebody that you know on a phone number of his that you know very well, and he's requesting for financial support for a problem that you know he really has. But all this has been generated by a bot, and somebody's bought this bot and he's compromising quite a number of people within the country. And you hear that he's walked away with so much money. We've had such problems where you find the CFO is actually sending an email and the counter is actually validating that by checking the email. He's had a phone call and he's gone ahead to pay thousands of money, to an account which will later wipe that account clean. And by the time they get to realize, it's too late. So these scenarios are real. And once they happen, we know that that is very easy. When chatbot was brought out as another scenario, some people did pay to actually get to use this chatbot to develop malware that was not yet seen before, that could compromise anyone. And by the time the developers of ChatGPT realized to block that functionality, there were thousands of malware that had been, and they were put up on a malware as a service for sale. And, you cannot say that you were able to beat these tools because they're already out there for sale. So as we continue to put firewalls in place, as we continue to teach the human firewall to learn what exactly compromises can be like, we know that, it's the human that can help control most of these compromises that we never used to see in the past. So that is the best firewall that we need to keep training and retraining the person. So one of those tools that I would always encourage people to use is KnowBe4. It's a very good platform. I'm not advertising it. I'm just saying as a very good platform that has gamified content, that has interesting content, can handle various topics like AI in a very interesting, captivating 5-minute training module. Those are some of the things that we should onboard. And, subscribe for as many staff of yours in an organization so that you can improve the ability to catch up. Thank you.
Thank you for that. From your perspective, as an IT risk specialist, how mature is Ugandan cybersecurity governance landscape, especially in the sector of finance, telco, and government? And how can organizations improve in these areas?
Well, usually the maturity is tested when you have a compromise. And we have seen that there are quite a number of compromises that have occurred. So it goes to say that we are on an improving curve. Way less compromises are being reported by even the police in the past year. And when you look at Uganda Bankers Association also, the number of cases that are being recorded are not as high as they were in the past. So there's quite a trend of improvement. However, the threat landscape remains open. We have a lot more readiness that needs to come in with regulation, of course, where they say there must be measures and controls in place. And these are validated through routine audits that are being carried out because we now have specifications where most audits that are financial that are being carried out in organizations, they are accompanied by information security audits. And this is helping bring up especially a lot more checks and balances to be validated by an external party. And for us that are supervised, again, we have mandatory information security audits that have to be carried out every more often. And of course, these results are submitted to the central bank, and the central bank wants to see improvement in every one of those areas of cybersecurity or information security. And as we go ahead with certifications like ISO, this is also pushing a lot of compliance at that point because it has to be demonstrated. When you send documentation that is validated in stage 1 of your audit, stage 2 will require somebody to come physically on site and validate how you are actually transacting in regard to information system security. As at that point, you have a system that is robust at that point. And if they discover any non-conformity, it may involve even withdrawing your certification at that point, which is something that is tragic, especially for people's careers as practitioners within IT security and risk management at that level. So there's a lot of governance again that is coming in with the central bank having brought in the cyber and technology risk guidelines as at the end of December. This is something that came in and they gave us 180 days of demonstrating that we are compliant by performing a gap analysis and then also treatment plans for the gaps that have been identified and, indicating submitting these returns to show that the central bank is actually going to come in and validate what you've submitted in your gap analysis and how you're treating those. So these are some of the things that are helping us get into that regulation phase. This wasn't there before, but effective 2024 December, this is something that has come in to help improve, especially for the supervised institutions. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to regulation, it helps drive so much innovation and need to improve in different areas. So, Peter, if someone wants to be the next Peter, what advice would you give them?
Well, it's a humble journey of looking out for the best mentors that you can have. Now, I'll tell you about a mentor. In my area, for instance, I look out for a very good gentleman called Kasenene. Not the Dr. Kasenene, as most people know. They have
That's
similar
what I was
names.
thinking of.
Yeah, they have similar names. They look alike. And he inspired me greatly, especially when it comes to digital transformation. You know, that journey is what takes you to the boardroom. Where you look at IT security as being a practitioner based, uh, form of technology, to transition to the boardroom, you need to speak the language that says to secure a platform, for instance, this will help drive the income that is attached to the assurance of clients that this is secure. I can rely on it. I can depend it on any day. When I need to access it, it keeps my data confidential. It maintains the integrity of my profile. No one is breaking into it. It's available 24/7. No hackers are bringing it down because of the distributed denial of service. So these are some of the things that I was able to pick from such a mentor amongst the many mentors that I have. I have another mentor called Eric Cole. Eric Cole is on YouTube predominantly, and he has CISO uh, talks that he hosts, and he's hosted quite tremendous characters. He's written books as well for those that are interested to read them. Then I have another mentorship program that is called Cyber Leadership Program, and I picked this from a colleague of mine and also a friend, Diana Gava from now Stambik. And this is one of those people that mentored me, especially at the onset of my journey in practitioner uh, level of security, and quite a lot, quite a lot. Yeah, you get pushed by such mentors to know that you do not know what you know right now, not as an underprivilege, but as a privilege for you to actually learn and demonstrate your learning. So effort goes to praise some of the mentors that we have, and also when you choose to learn, I've encouraged myself to go through EC Council. EC Council is my go-to for knowledge. I joined the university after trying the CPENT, Certified Penetration Tester, master level exam, very difficult exam. Of course, based on how it is done, uh, it showed me my performance in that exam was not because I didn't know what I was doing, but it showed me that you needed to have a much better background. So I went back to study all the certifications that were below that exam, and I'll definitely reattempt such an exam, showing that my initial failure was to build my experience in cybersecurity better, because as a practitioner, you cannot always say you know everything, right? Because sitting for a 4-hour exam just because you've been doing IT security and think you will pass that practical exam was a joke. But it helped me improve, and I've gotten the very best mentors from Bavisi, who leads that unit, and EC Council will take you there. Again, I'm not advertising it. For those that have chosen to study, there are many scholarships that they give. There are many offers that they give 50%. Sometimes they charge you $100 for something that costs $1,000. And that is especially done for Africa. So anyone that is interested in learning, this is a very good platform. You may be in a very good university, but EC Council is a different university. Thank you.
Ah, thank you for that. Definitely, also me, I've stood on the shoulders of Diana Gaba. She mentored me in my early stages. So yeah, I can attest to that. So, for people who want to get to know you, are there any parting shots you have for us, and where someone can find you?
Okay, I like to say this. Cybersecurity is not just an IT issue, right? It is actually a business imperative that IT or information system security be brought to every one of us because we cannot turn from people. We are more intertwined with people and we need people to actually get onto the culture as compared to using policy. When you use policies, it means the culture has failed. So if you can grow the culture of the people around you to embrace security and practice that by default, then you have won. And that is all I'd like to say to everyone. Thank you.
Where they can find you?
So where you can find me, you can find me on LinkedIn. If you reach me on LinkedIn, I'll get back to you. And I think that's pretty much how you found me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm actually reachable on LinkedIn much more than any other platform. And I actually will post there slightly more than I post anywhere else. Thank you.
Okay. So I've definitely added your LinkedIn in the show notes. So if someone wants to reach you, yes, they can easily reach you. And now, apart from that, I would like to thank you for making it on the show. And definitely, there's a lot of golden nuggets you've put in the conversation about risk, about the evolution of the cybersecurity as a whole, and what are the expectations according to the guidelines from BOU, Bank of Uganda. And definitely that brings a lot of new knowledge to what I already know. And as they say, Diana always says, iron sharpens iron. So yes, thank you for sharpening me in terms of that area. So thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much
Yes,
for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure to be here.
you're
Thank you.
welcome. For our audience, please reach out to Peter. He's definitely a humble guy, and you can easily reach him through LinkedIn. Other than that, we are on the road to 1,000 subscribers, so be sure to subscribe. We are on all platforms, all podcast platforms, so be sure to subscribe. Let us know what works and what doesn't work in the comment section. Otherwise, see you all in the next episode.
Thank you so much.